14 people. This is being recorded, so anybody who's missing out today is going to be able to review and will review today's recording. And so without further ado, let me share my screen and provide a proper introduction to our guest speaker, Kely Norel. She is a staff research scientist in digital health at the IBM T.J. Watson Research Center in Yorktown Heights, that is right, in upstate. I've been there a couple of times myself. It's a beautiful campus with, I don't know whether you have an office with a view, but I think there's very few offices with a view. There's, everybody is sitting inside, but then you go outside to these beautiful, areas where you can view the forests out there. She will be talking about the most recent work about automated assessment and speech intelligibility to remotely track ALS progression. We are all very familiar with this work, of course, because we've been collaborating with Kely for a long time. Some of the data here was actually captured over the years using TINA, and so we are really looking forward to learning more about this and asking you difficult questions about your findings. But before doing so, I want to give a little bit background for those of you who don't know Kely yet from our previous collaborations. She is, as I mentioned, a staff research scientist at IBM, and with a very strong focus on language-based NLP and speech-based assessments for neurological, neuropsychiatric, and neurodegenerative diseases. ALS is one of those, but there's many other ones that she's actively pursuing, using a lot of the methods that we are very interested in, including mathematical modeling, bioinformatics, system biology, natural language processing, machine learning, signal processing, large language models, all these interesting technologies. A co-inventor on a number of granted patents, as well as author and co-author on 50 peer-reviewed papers, and one of them that you celebrated recently is being cited over 1,000 times. So that's a major achievement. Kely comes with a PhD in computer science from Tel Aviv University, and a Master of Science also from Israel, from Weizmann Institute of Science. And am I mistaken that you're originally from South America?
Yeah, Chile.
Chile, right? Okay. So your accent, of course, reveals the Spanish.
The Spanish.
But then I saw also your bachelor degree was from Chile. So welcome. This is our bi-weekly company update. We usually go through internal things and celebrate things that we do here, but we have the rare opportunity to have a guest speaker here today. So I hand over to you, and we'll stop sharing my screen because you probably have your slides that you want to share yourself.
So first of all, thank you, Vikram, for inviting me. And thank you, DSO, for the nice introduction. And yes, it's true, I speak Spanglish, but I hope it's clear enough. If not, please feel free to ask me questions.
Absolutely.
So we use, of course, a different platform. So let me see, where is the share here?
It's a little which has this arrow pointing to the top, computer with an arrow pointing to the top. You click on it, and you pick the tab, the entire screen.
1 second. Yeah, okay, yes. I need this presentation that was on a different screen, maybe now. Why is not allowing me to pick this one?
So is that potentially the entire screen?
Yeah. No, now I think we're fine.
Yeah, we see it. Yes.
You see it, but you don't see it in presentation mode, right?
No, we see.
We see the present. We see the PowerPoint.
The other one. Yeah. Okay. Now it's better.
Yeah. Now it's good.
Perfect.
Okay. Perfect, thank you. So I don't see you guys, so if you want to ask questions, either at the end or you will have to speak up.
We will.
So I'm going to present, as DSO was mentioning, our most recent paper was published, I don't know, like 3 weeks ago, MPJ Digital Medicine. Apparently it's been very well received. We have a lot of views and some people contacting us, so we're sort of happy with it. So the main work was done by the IBM team with Michele Merler from AI, Carla Gutto and Guillermo Secchi from Digital Health, and I've been working with them for several years. We have some papers with you guys as well. And the data was collected by Everything ALS using your platform. So if you have questions about the quality control of the data, I reflect those questions to you guys. Okay?
Yes, very much so.
So I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with ALS in this group, so I will speak a little bit about that. So ALS is a neurodegenerative condition that targets motor neurons. People lose control of their limbs, extremities. They get paralyzed. They also have dysarthria. They cannot speak. But at the end, people die because they cannot breathe. And something that is very unfortunate, as of now, the diagnosis takes about a year and a half. Once you get the diagnosis, for most people, you will die within 2 to 4 years. So as you can imagine, wasting that year and a half, if you have then 4 more years to live, is very expensive. And also, my impression, and many other people think the same way, is that one of the reasons clinical trials are failing is because when somebody is already diagnosed, has a lot of damage in their brain. So it's much harder to recover. I heard a comparison that is like you get diagnosed with cancer in stage 4. So there are not many treatments that, will work for you. So the idea is also to be looking for some early markers of disease so we can make faster the diagnosis or help to make faster the diagnosis so people can get at least treatments to either stop or slow progression. Now, not everybody starts with problems in speech, dysarthria, but most of the people do, over 80% of them. And it's a concern for the patients because they cannot communicate with the people they want to. So your quality of life is largely impacted by this. Now, the most common way to measure disease progression is by this LSFRS-R scale. Those are 12 questions, and it's a self-report. So you have all the biases you can think of with any self-report, and speech is one of those questions. So in a sense, you have a scale from 0 to 5, from 0 to 4, 5 points, where 4 means my speech is intact, to 0 you cannot communicate.
And Kelly, before we go on, I have a quick question about the this one point you're making here. Dysarthria manifests in over 80% of people with ALS. Eventually, or at a
yeah, eventually. I mean, yeah, when you the more you progress. Mm-hmm.
Right, because we have sometimes seen in people with limb onset, people with early stage disease who have not yet
correct
noticed change in their speech, that we
correct.
are still able to see this already, right?
I will show you we are able to see it, but
okay.
For the person, they don't perceive it. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but some people will have their speech until the end. Yeah, so it doesn't affect everybody. Mm-hmm. Most people, but not everybody. Okay, so usually ALS is classified, one of the ways it's classified is where you have your first symptoms. It's called the onset. And bulbar is the part that has to do with speaking, swallowing, salivating. That is one of the areas of this LSFRS. The minority of the people have onset on the bulbar area. Those people have a worse prognosis, meaning they progress faster, so they die sooner. And there are in some papers, not all of them agree, but some papers said most females have bulbar onset than males. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but the problem is that even if you don't have a bulbar onset, let's say you started with extremities, most likely you will develop dysarthria. Now, as I was mentioning, the LSFRS-R scale lacks granularity, in particular for early speech variation detection. It's a very crude scale. So we're looking for a more sensitive and objective assessment method. So we are going to be using something called listener effort. Listener effort is measuring how much effort you need to put to understand the person. So it's also a perception if you want, but this is being done by trained SLPs, speech language pathologists, and the particular ones that put the scores to the audios in this study work in particular with people with ALS. So they're used to listening to people with ALS. So you have, first of all, much more granularity in differentiating the different levels, the severity of the dysarthria, right? So up to now, most models use a scale of 0 to 4. We are using 0 to 100. And as you know, it's very important to have a good ground truth if you want to train a model. So what we want to do? Why we want to have a model? To do what? Mm-hmm. So we want to infer the listener effort score from short speech recordings. Now, it's very expensive to have these 3 people evaluating each of the audios. So you don't want to be doing that forever, right? But it's a good way, again, to train a model. So you want to do this automatically. Of course, we want to do remote monitoring. First of all, by the fact that you can do it at home, you can do it once a week, let's say. So you have a much better, more clarity how your path is going, how is your progression going. But also is you can deploy it for more people. First of all, people with ALS has mobility issues towards as they progress more, so it's hard for them to go to the doctor. But also many people live far away from neurology centers. So there are people in rural areas, or I'm not thinking even on another countries, that actually they are not being seen by a neurologist, maybe once a year, even less. So with this is a tool really that could be scalable and can reach people that otherwise cannot be seen by the neurologist. Now, of course, I'm not saying we want to replace the neurologist with this, but to have it as a tool to help with the measuring disease progression.
Right.
And the other thing that is nice about this model is that it adds clinical interpretability. So we identify some elements that are driving this deterioration. So eventually you can have, let's say you are working with a speech pathologist, they can target the exercises to work on, particular on your problems. And also we have the finding that we'll see. So the existing AI models, on one hand, you have models that use handcrafted features. So you have more interpretability, you know where these features are coming from. But as you will see, the performance is good, but not fantastic. And on the other hand, you have these deep learning approaches that the accuracy of the model is better, but it's, the usual black box. You don't know what's going on. And we want the best of both worlds.
And say again, the handcrafted features, can you give me an example?
Sure. Duration of the speech,
Yeah.
the rate of speaking, the loudness, the MFCCs, the typical, Pratt or OpenSmile or all of those, right?
So that's what you call handcrafted, and then deep learning is
end-to-end. Mm-hmm.
You can actually use deep learning to predict your LE listener effort score, right?
Yeah.
So how is that different? So you want to combine these two, you said, right?
I mean, I want the advantage of this type of model. I don't know if you see my cursor.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So the advantage of using handcrafted features is that at the end you check the weights of the features, and you know that, for example, speech speed is a very important feature, right?
Yes.
Okay. You cannot do that with the deep learning approaches because you have an...
So you will, you combine some of the handcrafted features and combine it. No, you don't? Okay.
No. What I want to do is to get the ability to see what's important for the model, yeah, but also have the ability to have better results.
Mm-hmm.
So with deep learning end-to-end, you have better results usually, but you don't have interpretability. You cannot say what's the most important part of the model, as opposed to with the classical machine learning, if you want. So we want, again, the best of both worlds. So we want an AI model that will have high precision for disarthria assessment, but also we want to have clinical interpretability. So we want to be able to have some actionable insights. So we use this listener effort rating that is a clinical meaningful measure, and we already saw it has much better granularity, and we use an attention-based deep learning for high precision. So first, we will create a model that produces highly accurate results. Then on top of that, we put an attention layer, an attention focus layer, so we can gain insight where the model is paying attention. Okay? So with that, we can uncover, again, what is showing the changes in speech. So I don't know if this is necessary here or not, but I will do a very short intro on this focus mechanism in AI. So let's say we want to check if an animal is an elephant or not. So the same way that we humans need to focus in certain details. So for example, we will check for let's say you are explaining to a kid how to identify an elephant. So they have big ears, they have a long trunk, they have tusks. Probably with that, I will be able to identify an elephant. So in the same way here, we want our model to pay attention to those important details. So without focusing, the AI models will treat every part of the input equally. And the focus mechanism allows you to pay attention, if you want, to certain aspects of your input. And they ignore what's irrelevant, what's in the background. And this works better for long or complex inputs. In our case, the input is audio. So it's one of the examples where this works better. So let's say, what's the difference between, because you can say in Lasso also, we have weights for the features. Yeah. But the issue is that if you are using focus attention model, those weights are changed dynamically, much more locally. So for example, when you train a classical machine learning algorithm, it will have, after the training, it will have weights, no matter what the question is, for the different parts of the elephant, the different features. But if I have this focus mechanism, it's a dynamic adaptation of the weight. So for example, if the question is identify the animal, you will pay a lot of attention to the trunk and to the ears, and not a lot to the feet, to the legs. On the other hand, if I ask you count the number of legs in this animal, you need to put attention to the legs. Okay?
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So how this is achieved? Well, depending on the question asked and the problem is, you will put weights, here they are shown in different colors, right? Where the model has to pay attention. So let's say this is happening, then we know after the model has been trained that in order to identify an elephant, I need to pay attention to the big ears and to the trunk and the tusks. And the shape of the tail is not critical. So again, real world example if you want. You have these three animals and you need to detect which one is which. So if the question is this an elephant? You will pay attention to the trunk, the ears, the tusk, and not a lot about the background of the legs. On the other hand, I can ask you a different question. What color is the animal? And then your focus is different. This is in all the body and the skin. So that's the point. Now, why this is useful also? Because let's say you need to debug your code. It's much easier to debug if you know where the model is paying attention, because in a sense you know when you are training where some signal can be. You are looking where the model is looking at. So I don't know. I think it's good. There was a paper in 2017 called Attention is All You Need, and that started really a revolution in AI. After that is the ChatGPT and the LLMs. Again, why Google?
It's the time the transformer was described, right? Attention is all you need. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for example, translation, why works much better now than a few years ago? Because many words have a different meaning depending on where in the context is. So you need to see exactly the whole sentence if you want to see precisely the meaning of one word. Also, when they are analyzing X-ray, you see where they're paying attention, so giving like indication to the physician, etc. Well, now back to our study. So we analyzed over 2,000 audios. There are 124 participants. The scale is from 0 to 100, and we have 3 SLPs. From these 124 participants, 104 have ALS. The median age is 64, and as in the general population, the bulbar onset in this cohort is around 22%. And again, thanks to Tina, we have a remote data collection via, I hope, a secure web platform. Is it secure?
It is 100% secure. DGP can speak to this.
Yeah.
Kely, can I ask a quick question here?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself and you'll answer this. Why the 20 controls?
Well, because we needed some controls, because I wanted to have some controls, but we know that in controls you have a very small dynamic range, because most of the scores for these people will be close to 0.
Right.
So you will be putting, if you want, more weight in people with very low scores. And again, I would love to have 1,200, right? But, well, we don't have. So in a sense, it's how, if you need to pay to these SLPs, and it's a lot of time for them to do it, because every audio is evaluated a couple of times, once per SLP, but also some of them are evaluated in different days by the same SLP to check that they are doing, they have intra-rate consistency. And I mean, you mean why not 50-50? Because we have the signal we're interested in the start trace in the ALS patients and not in the controls.
And Kely, there's 2,100 recordings, about 120 participants, so about 20 on average, 20 recordings per participant. But you have also multiple tasks that you look at. So how many sessions per participant?
Okay.
Sessions or?
Yeah. So we are only using the sentence readings, the 11, 13, and 15 word sentences that, as you probably know, change every week, so there is no learning effect.
Mm-hmm.
And also the idea, these sentences were not chosen randomly, is to capture the articulation challenges of people with dysarthria. And the idea is that they reflect the real world communication demands. So you will see most of our patients have at least 2 sessions. It's a little bit later. So for some, we have several sessions.
So Kely, how do you pick which session from a given participant? Was it based on their FRSR score? Because you could have had the same person do sessions over 2 years, right?
Yeah. So I can pull the paper, but they were selected, so they have a couple of sessions, at least 3 months apart, one from the other. And they wanted that we have the same number of males and females, and that we have people at different levels of dysarthria. Yeah, so based on LSFRI, RS1. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
And I didn't do the selection. That was done by Everything ALS. So our methodology has 3 steps. The first one is the ground truth calculation. Then we have the training of the model, and then we have the clinical interpretation. So for the ground truth calculation, we call this composite listener effort scores because it's an agreement between different SLPs. So first of all, the SLPs also annotated if they found that there was too noisy the recording or there was an issue, and those were discarded. Then we only decided to take the 2 closest ones. We noticed that for some of the audios, not a lot, but some, one grader was very, very different in the score than the other 2. So instead of averaging the 3 of them, we are taking only the closest 2 scores. And even more, if the difference between those 2 is more than 10 points, that is 10% of the scale, we also exclude them. If not, we average those 2. Now, here you see the distribution of this composite score by the number of words in the sentence. So it doesn't really matter the length of the sentence. Here you see that it's a very good correlation between this composite score and LSFRS-R question 1 speech. But what I think is very interesting is that people that consider themselves a 4, yeah, some of them have low, so no effort or not a lot of effort to understand them, but some of them are very, very hard to understand. So again, people that see themselves as having intact their speech, they don't. So of course, when you are using this as a gold standard, it's very problematic because you are telling the model this audio doesn't have dysarthria, but in fact it has dysarthria.
That's an interesting finding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Now with LSFRS-3, so the person thinks there is some level of dysarthria, but not a lot. It's even worse. You have, look how many dots they are in the very high composite score, right? Okay, so here you see how many were flagged at the different stages. Now you see that the inter-rater kappa is pretty good with the original scores, but after we did all these removals, we get a much better one. And again, for us, it was very important to have a good ground truth. So we have a strong correlation between the composite scores and the LSFRS-R speech. We capture deterioration even when the person thought he has a normal speech. And well, you see that the new scale is able to capture more subtle speech changes than the standard metric that is used now. So for the step 2, we tried 2 different models. Both of them take the audio and represent it by the spectrogram, and with that is an end-to-end model without the representation. Now, in the third step, we go back from the once we have a good model, we put a layer that is checking where the model is paying attention, the focus, and we can go back to the spectrogram and then back to the audio on which sounds were produced at that time. So for example, here you have a graphical representation of what just said. So first, when we have the ground truth calculation, and this is a real example. So for one audio in particular, one person said 28, the other 36, and the other 56. So this person got eliminated, this score, and we have that the composite score is a 32. That is what the person read this sentence, we have the audio, this is mapped to a spectrogram, here is the encoder, decoder, all that. Our prediction is 32.34, pretty close. But here on top, you put the map that is checking the attention. So we use the mean attention map on the last layer. So you see these dark spots is where the model is paying attention, and then you can map that to the spectrogram, and from the spectrogram, you can map it back to the sentence read. Now, you see that there is an inspiration at the beginning. So that's something that is interesting. So,
sorry, Kely, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the back mapping, the positional mapping, is this done automatically, or are you doing this for specific utterances, or is this just all done in code, or is this something you're looking at individual utterances and just for the sake of interpretation?
No, it's all done with code.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're able to pull out for across every single prediction, you're able to say these are the words that it was focusing on, as well as...
Yeah, you will see in a second.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if 100% of them, but for many, for most.
Got it, thanks.
Yeah, so the model performance is quite good with the 0.92 R-square. This is for the whisper fine-tune. Now, just to make sure that we were really comparing to our older work, if you want, we have the handcrafted features that we have used in the past. We have one with the lasso, we have one with fine-tune, and you see the results are not as good as with the whisper fine-tune, which is attention-based. So really it's a game changer. I mean, it's a lot of difference between, if you want the R-square of 0.7 to 0.92.
That's incredible. And it's the same data set, right?
Yeah, of course.
Same data set.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we want to be fair in our comparisons.
Yeah.
So here we see that on the how well we did. So first of all, the different colors for the points are for the different sentence lengths, and it doesn't matter. You see all the colors everywhere. So this is the composite score, the ground truth we computed, and this is the inferred one. And so if we will have a R square of 1, we will be on this dashed line. We're a little bit off, in particular at the higher composite score, but one explanation is because most of our data is in the low end of the composite scores. So we have more training data here, not a lot here, and some here. Now, other thing that we discover is that most of our audios are read by English native speakers. So the model performs much better on English native speakers. So we will have to get more data in different languages to be able to improve the model. I mean, it was not only a fact of using a whisper multilingual or whisper in English. It's also an issue of training.
An issue of rating, perhaps. So because the listener, the speech language pathologists, they have also an issue with non-native speech.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about your train test and cross-validation split? Because I'm guessing that you did not test on your training data, right? So you probably, in order to generate this plot, you probably did leave one speaker out or something? What did you do here?
Okay, so in general, you will see later we do 5-fold and 10-fold, and the results are the same. I mean, it's comparable.
Did you have a test set over here?
That's all good.
So, sorry, I was just asking, how did you generate this plot? Did you have because in order to see an inferred listener effort score, you are inferring it on a subset of data that you didn't use for training, right? I'm assuming.
Yeah, but then you can do let's say
for every cross-validation.
You rotate. Yeah, and then you aggregate all your results. Let's say you average.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so the cross-validation was by leaving speakers out. So say 10% of the speakers were chosen.
Correct. Yeah. And you see that, it doesn't say here. Well, we did cross-validation in 5-fold and 10-fold, leaving the speaker out. And you see that the performance is independent of, the sentence length. So now this is what you were asking about the sounds. So let's focus, let's say, in this one for a second. This is the most frequent unigrams. So one sound at a time. And it's not necessarily one letter because, in English you have like 14 vowels. In Spanish we have only 5. So they are the sounds. But you see, for example, the N, the R, those are sounds that are known to be problematic for people with LSFRS and dysarthria. But you see that independent of your composite score, the model was paying attention to these sounds. Yes, you see, they are all over the place, right? And then we did the same for bigrams and trigrams. What is interesting in this one, that is the most common word, you see that this one only appears at the low composite score, not 0, but let's say around 20, 30. This is the aspiration.
So that means when people aspire, it seems
they
to be...
They take air where it shouldn't. So we don't know, and this is just this is something that was told to us by reviewers. It's something that needs to be investigated further, but probably they don't have enough lung capacity, so they're taking air where other people are not, even though all our analysis is in the first 10 seconds of the reads. So it's not a lot of time.
You limited to the first 10 seconds of...
Yeah.
sentence.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So now it's the same plot, but in a smaller scale. So some things we recover from something that is known in literature, that, for example, letter A is, attended at is a very frequent word in English, right? But then we found that that sound is problematic for people with the ALS, and is very informative. Then, no matter what's your progression of the disease or if you are a control, that's very different for the model. Then we have also the rhotic vowels. That's R with a vowel. That's also something that is more difficult for people with ALS. And again, we confirm previous findings about the vowel distortion in dysarthria, but also identify some specific combination of phonemes that is challenging for this patient. So eventually that you can use to target speech therapy intervention.
And Kely, just very quick about this. Did you use forced alignment for this? In other words, if you have, there's a target sentence which people were supposed to say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, now they have strong dysarthria or
Mm-hmm.
they skip certain words, right? For example, the or that don't carry
Mm-hmm.
meaning. So is that perhaps associated with the fact that you've identified the and that as being the ones that attention is being paid to, because people with strong dysarthria may just skip them?
Oh,
I
that's
have the same
interesting.
question. Are you checking that what they said is what they're supposed to have said, right?
Yeah.
Probably not,
Yeah.
because it's very difficult to run a speech recognizer on
Mhm.
a large vocabulary speech recognizer, on this dysarthric speech. So that may be something to listen to, because we have seen this, I think, in the past as well, that people skip function words when this dysarthria. The more severe the ALS is, the more they skip function words, I think.
Or there is like there are also disfluencies, right? Like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that you might, of course, you're probably using a speech recognizer, so you're probably getting some.
We whisper. We're using
Okay.
whisper. Mm-hmm. And whisper is very good in transcription.
Mm-hmm. We use whisper too, right? Vikram?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is one example. This is for a control, that is the effort that the SLPs has to put to understand this person is a 1, so really almost nothing. And you see that he read all the sentence in 8 seconds. So here there is no spectrogram. And you see that the model only focus in one particular word, that is clerk. So that's where the model was focusing. Here we have another example where the person has a 32 score, so he's starting to get the functional issues with the dysarthria. You see that the model is focusing in several sounds and is doing an inspiration where shouldn't be. Mm-hmm.
So is that one of the features you think that the model looks at in terms of the number of attended words?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
No.
Oh, this is just an example over here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But these are true examples. Just to show how this is going.
Sure.
So the attention pattern analysis. The models attend to phonemes known to be challenging in ALS dysarthria, like the rhotic vowel. But again, we didn't feed that information, right? The model discovered that again. And it's consistent because it's finding some, if you want, problematic sounds, no matter if you are mediumly progress on the disease or very progress in the disease. But if you cannot speak at all, no, but different levels of severity. And the idea is that we found these inspiration sounds that could be markers of subtle deterioration when you are starting to have dysarthria. So the validation for
Those are
this is...
difficult to elicit, right? Sorry to
Sorry?
interrupt. The inspiration sound, that's a very nice finding, Kely, but isn't it difficult to elicit those sounds? Right, if you want to, I'm just thinking ahead, if you were to deploy this in a test, right, in an assessment going forward, how would we elicit an inspiration sound? I mean, we might get it, of course.
No, you don't need to
No.
do this. It's just a byproduct.
Yeah, it
just
happens. It shouldn't happen. So you will detect it even if it shouldn't have happened. Because a 10-second sentence, you can read without having to breathe in the middle.
Right, but some people might take a breath and breathe, right? So you can't control for it. That's my point. It's difficult to elicit in a controlled manner. So or at least...
No, we don't want to elicit. If you find it, you find it.
Yeah, you read that sentence, and if it happens so that more inspirations are happening in an unnatural way, the model will pay attention to it and will mark.
Oh, I see.
That's basically what happens.
Yeah. So some of the patterns we found are known to be dysarthria characteristics. The model focused on clinical relevant speech elements, and this is providing explainable AI for clinical, if you want, decision support. So in a sense, we are opening the black box to look inside. Now, as I was telling you, for most of the people, we have at least 2 sessions. In the median is 11 months between one and another, because, not everybody will do all the sessions. And here we have some examples with longitudinal data. The different colors are for the different sentence length, and the dashed lines are the predictions, and the solid lines are the gold standard. And you see that the model is able to follow the trend. So as the people is deteriorating in their speech, also the model is picking up that. So the model is independent, the accuracy of the model is independent of the disease progression stage, effective both at early and late ALS. What are the limitations of what I told you today? First of all, the model doesn't perform so good in non-native English speakers, but again, part is the data, part is what the DSO was saying that we didn't think about before, for the gold standard true. Now, usually in a regular cohort of ALS people, let's say for a clinical trial, they assume that you will have 1 point of deterioration per month in the scale from 0 to 48. In this cohort, the progression rate is 0.3. So we have slow progressors. And our control group is people that are healthy controls. We don't have people with other neurological conditions. So it would be nice to have people with Parkinson's or Huntington's who can try to do differential diagnosis. So again, we are limited for now to findings in ALS. So future research, try with multilingual models, expand the data set, cross-disease validation for differential diagnosis. And for now, we don't do this on the fly. But, well, we hope we can do that if you want to deploy it on clinical trials or something. So concluding, we have a model with an R-squared performance of 0.92. We identify some key phonemes. As far as we know, this is the first attention-based deep learning model for ALS dysarthria assessment. We validated this with the listener effort, which is a known sensitive measure of speech deterioration. And, well, we show that these models perform better than the traditional approaches.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah. And we think this can be used as a for clinical trials as a endpoint. By the fact that it's remote monitoring is easier for the patients, and we have a better precision for the assessment of dysarthria while maintaining interpretability. So we provide a robust interpretable AI tool that enhances clinical assessment of speech deterioration in ALS with potential for broad application in neurological disorders. We want to thank the people with ALS and the controls that donated their data, and the SLPs that did all the rating, and for everything ALS that did all the data collection. And now I'm open for questions, but I will show you when we publish the paper, we got the opportunity to make a graphic abstract. So in a sense, it's a very cute summary of the paper.
Very nice.
Graphic
Yeah.
abstract. I haven't heard about this before. It's like a poster.
Now this is becoming quite a standard in papers. So this is.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, it's the second one we have. In another paper, the journal said, oh, I want to talk to you. I can help you do this, that. Sure, why not? So, and they put it in the table of contents as a small figure. And you can put it in your LinkedIn or whatever, you know.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, Kely, first of all, it's congratulations on the on that work. It's amazing work. It's a milestone, and of course the performance you achieved. It's incredible. When you look at the other models you compared it to, it's incredible.
Thank you.
Intention. And it shows like how robust you can do this, right? And when you think about it, self-administered, you take your own device, you speak for 10 seconds, and you do it, and then you run this model, and it's robust to noise, robust to speaker variability, and it finds out what really matters, and then you also R-square of 0.92.
Yeah.
Of course, there's a few caveats which you mentioned. I have one additional one. You discarded 15% of the sessions because of various reasons. Like there was there was too much of a discrepancy between the different raters. So that's of course something which in the real world, when you deploy them to an actual clinical trial, you really can't discard. You could, but you shouldn't. So that's something which makes it complicated.
Okay, but when you are making your model, when you are training your model, you want to be as clean as possible.
Yeah, you can do this, but then discarding anything from the test set is always a question. Should you ever discard anything? Because then you bias. You have a selection bias, and you discarded the 15% most complicated cases, and now of course your model performs better. So that's one of the things.
Yeah. I will talk with our team.
Yeah, and one more thing, of course, you mentioned the non-native speakers that may be challenging for various reasons. But one other question is, of course, when you want to bring it into the world, is also how this is multilingual. So some of the underlying measures that we talked before, which is like how fast you speak, speaking rate, pause percentage, these type of things, they are language independent, so you can deploy them into whatever Chinese immediately. But this, of course, there's no effort is probably language dependent, right?
I think so, because well, I don't know really the listener effort, as long as the speech pathologist speak whatever language you are speaking, right? But the model will pick up different sounds. Again, I'm unable to pronounce I don't remember, 12 or 14 vowels that you have in English.
Yeah, look at this. Yeah, it's interesting.
We only say 5.
Yeah, and so that would be also, I think, a future direction, perhaps, also for you to consider, because we deploy these things a lot in multilingual context. So many of the studies that we do are in a dozen languages or so. And so the question is, the listener effort, which is a really good and clinically meaningful measurement, One of the caveats could be that it can't be just deployed to different languages like that. So that would be one of the things
But
that...
again, I imagine you will have to find local speech pathologies, and I don't think they will have an issue.
You redo it for every language, which is different from, say, speaking rate, where you don't have
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
you go. So that's a question. If you could show that it works for Spanish right out of the box, I take that English model, deploy to Spanish, it works pretty well. So that would be an interesting...
Yeah, that would be a great experiment. I mean, just to the generalizability of the model. But this is still excellent. I mean, I think really good questions and really nice going well. Thanks for presenting, Kely. Thanks for...
No, thank you for inviting me again.
Yeah. Anyone else? I mean, we dominated, Bikram and I, the conversation so much. Anyone else with questions you want to address? Then of course, one is, if no one else, one is this model is now has been evaluated. It's been, I think, also discussed with the regulators, right? With the FDA, perhaps.
We were left outside of the discussion.
Oh, you are. Okay.
I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. Same for us, by the way. So, so the question is, in which way?
I would love to, but
yeah,
again, we were left out of that conversation, which I don't know. I will not tell you about my feelings about that. I don't want trouble.
That makes sense. But the general question is, you have this excellent model, right? You have this methodology. We want to bring it to the people. We want to get regulatory support for this. You say it's intrinsically clinically meaningful, which a good argument can be made. It is. So if we can make that a standard for the community,
that would be wonderful. But IBM will not go to the FDA and do all that process because that's not our business.
But will IBM make it available?
Yeah.
That's the question. If you would make this algorithm available or the model available, we could do, for example, we could take it, we could put it into TINA and produce that measure alongside the other measures, and we could have that conversation with the FDA alongside our sponsors, and so
that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so if that's a way we could potentially move this forward and really bring it to the people, bring it to use, good use, that would be fantastic.
So you will do all the paperwork and contacts with the FDA and all that part?
We are, for example, in an interventional trial. It's a phase 2 study. It's a pivotal study of one of our sponsors, and we are in conversation with the FDA for specific use for regulatory decision making. So they're looking at the evidence. They're looking at the validation data. And it's a long process. They're not going to tell you tomorrow, okay, let's go ahead. We could deploy it in this trial. And so alongside the validation data that you've already done, which is the observational study with everything else, we would collect similar data in an interventional trial, and that together can bring rise or give rise to it being used in one interventional trial, which then can be aided in others.
That would be wonderful. Let me speak up with my people up.
Perfect.
You know, some things I cannot decide. I'm just a small
one contributor to the organization. Okay, let's take that as next step. It would be fantastic, and we would love to talk about this and explore specifically all the questions that we had. Multilingual. Many of the studies are not multilingual, but fantastic. Thank you very much, Kely, again, for getting in touch with Vikram, being available for that, for presenting to us, and it's an excellent paper, excellent work. Thank you so much.
We were looking forward to meeting you here, Kely, but I think we were not able to connect when you were here.
Because I was in Livermore. It's far away, 2 hours by car.
So we are happy to come to you. We would have been happy to come to you and meet you in person, but next time, perhaps.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kely.
Bye.
Bye.